Well, I was prompted to write that article to give my views on the land unsettlement issue that Jamaica suffers from because of the incident where the houses that were being built by Jamaican citizens were bulldozed by the government of Jamaica. Not only bulldozed, but that we were told of the demolition by none other than the Prime Minister himself in Parliament.
Tomorrow, the government will act to demolish those structures.
Now, firstly, there's a couple of things I want to touch on with that quickly. Democracies have what is known as separation of powers. You have the legislature, you have the judiciary, and you have the executive. Andrew Holness as Prime Minister is head of the executive. The judiciary, the court system, and the legislature are where the parliamentarians meet, the people elected to represent their constituencies. And to see the head of the executive branch using his position as part of the legislative branch to do an allegation, litigate the allegation, prosecute the allegation, conclude on the case, and determine what the penalties were, I think came very close to not just the demolition of the houses, but the demolition of Jamaica's democratic traditions. The reasons why the houses were being demolished was because people were settling on land that is crown property, land that the government owns, which the government has its own plans for. And that's fine, that a government has plans for the development of land. That's part of their role. My issue, though, is that the process never had any humanity. It was inhumane, it was arrogant, it was callous.
I can't build somewhere if I have a roof over my head, so I have to set my foundation from me. Look, I don't know where I'm going to do.
In 1655, when the English took Jamaica, they then brought Africans as slaves to be the labor force, the forced labor for their sugar estates and their other plantations. Up until 1834, when slavery was abolished, and 1838, when emancipation came, there was never any direct process that considered the enslaved Africans and their descendants to be humans, to deserve proper homes and proper shelter. When emancipation came, the first freedom that the enslaved Africans became entitled to was the freedom of homelessness. They had two choices: stay on the plantations on which they were whipped, some of them murdered, their children stolen from them, women raped, treated like cattle, or escape. Now, the best agricultural lands, the ones that were easy to transform into sugar plantations, are on the plains. What option, therefore, did the slaves have? They took to the hills. That's why you have communities like Fonthill in St. Thomas, communities like Domoto, communities like Troy, communities like Quickstep, communities like Whitton. And that's just a quick sample moving from east to west. The first generation of freed Africans took to the hills to escape the memory and the hatred that they experienced as slaves on the plantations. Now, the then governor certainly did not provide them any title or did not cut out any section of what is called crown lands for the recently freed Africans, the first Jamaicans. And every British governor since then up to 1962 ignored a legitimate role to provide proper housing and land tenure to the Jamaicans. Fast forward to 1962, we are an independent country. But between the period of 1938 and 1962, the issue of providing land to the landless became part of the reason for the establishment of the People's National Party. So, for example, Norman Manley, Jamaican premier at the time, made it a key point of policy for his administration to deal with the issue of landlessness for the Jamaicans.